I've heard, I'm sure we all have, a lot of arguments against AI art these past few years. The thing is, I think most of them are bad. The year is 2010 or thereabouts. My brothers and I set up a local Minecraft server so we could all play together for the first time. I still remember this little canyon where we built our houses. On one side, my older brother and I built this giant square cobblestone tower, which was absolutely hideous. My two younger brothers lived in a dirt shack just on the opposite side of us. Good times. We played for a few weeks on that world before we realized we could just use server commands to give us any blocks we wanted. My tiny 14-year-old mind was super excited to build with all the quote unquote valuable blocks. I think I built a giant statue out of diamonds. It was hideous. I'm not much of an artist, I guess. It was fun for an afternoon, but only an afternoon. It turns out when you just cheat for any blocks you want, there aren't actually any valuable blocks. I've heard, I'm sure we all have, a lot of arguments against AI art these past few years. The thing is, I think most of them are bad. Let's go over some of the ones that suck. And then after that, we can get into the real reasons you shouldn't use AI art. So, when AI art first started to pop off in the distant past of 2020, 2021, or whatever, people's first reaction and their first criticism was that it looked terrible. Half of what it turned out was just absolutely horrifying nightmare fuel. Y'all remember the hands? I think y'all remember the hands. We all remember the hands and the many hands with who knows how many fingers. It all had this uncanny valley look to it, like bad animatronics. The writing quality of ChatGPT when it first came out was also not that impressive. I mean, it was impressive in that it was better than anything that came before it, but it was a novelty at best, and it was clearly not human. People people kept talking about how human it was and how it could pass the the and how it could pass the Turing test, uh, but it couldn't. And anyone who thought it was a human is a moron. Even now, actually, you can very clearly tell which comments were written by AI, but people on Reddit respond to them like they're people, which maybe those are also AI. How deep does the rabbit hole go? We're going to have to cut all of this. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, even the occasional snippet from ChatGPT originally, whenever O1, I don't know what they named the first model, um, was even the snippets that were human like were like absolute amateur hour at best. At least that's how it was. Don't get me wrong, most AI content these days is still also absolute garbage and very clearly AI slop. But it's gotten better. Some of it's actually genuinely good, not even just good for a robot. It's just impressive. It looks good. It sounds good. It smells good. It tastes good. Cut that. It is clearly getting better, and all indications point to it continuing to get better, unless sort of the economic model that all these companies are built on is a bubble, and that's never happened to the tech industry before. So I think we're doomed on that front. Most of it does still suck, but the best of it, the best pictures, the best writing, the best video, does reach a certain level where it is impressive. Almost genuinely impressive and complex outputs that I just reread this to know what to say next and then immediately forgot. Oh, yeah. That's why I forgot because it's self deprecating. Some of it is as good or better than I can make. Not that I'm any great artist or writer. You know, you're hearing this script same as I am. I still haven't really seen any AI art that is better than sort of the peak of human creation, but it is getting better. I think the idea that AI is always going to look, sound, and read worse than what humans make is almost certainly just cope. So when you make arguments against AI on the basis of its quality, really stop and think about what you're saying. Are you saying that if the quality gets better, you're going to like suddenly adopt it and support AI art? I know I won't. I think the argument that AI art is trained on real artists' works without compensating them is a little bit stronger than the quality argument. The obvious counter is that, of course, real artists also study other people's art to inspire their own works. It just it feels like there's something different about a human artist looking at a piece of art, admiring it, incorporating what they value from it into not only their future art, but in a very real way themselves as a person versus a cold, lifeless machine that's been indiscriminately trained on every single piece of art that's ever been made so that it can average them all together into some worthless slop on behalf of some Silicon Valley nerd who doesn't give a damn about art or the human experience. It's like the difference between sipping a fine scotch and having some bean counter tell you that it'd be more practical to have that fine scotch burned as a fuel to power the plastic widget factory. What I'm driving at is I think it's a strong argument for people who have some level of aesthetic values, but you have to keep in mind almost every single person with strong aesthetic values already hates AI art, right? Like it's an argument that preaches to the choir and it can't convince the people who like this soulless garbage. I think the common thread of what's wrong with these arguments is that they're not really arguing against AI art as AI art. They're arguing like from the margins in. They're arguing against the current implementation or the current circumstances around AI art, not AI art in and of itself. Like you think AI art is low quality. All right, fine. Are you going to support it when the quality improves? Right? You think AI art is bad because it's stole from artists. It's like would you support AI art if they paid the artist, you know, some pittance, some royalty? I guess what I'm saying is that the problem with these practical arguments is that even if there was to be AI art that was perfect in every way and it was trained 100% ethically, you know, they didn't rob anyone, they didn't rip anyone off, I would still hate it. And I'd wager you would also still hate it if you made it this far into the anti AI video. I just, I hate the practical arguments over, I mean, basically anything, but especially over art. You know, it's like, are artists, are y'all super famous for your rigid practicality? Is that what we've been doing this whole time? Right? Is that the oil painters are famous for their practicality? Right? It is. Or people are like, oh man, thank goodness George Lucas is so practical. It's like, what are we doing? What are we even doing here? Why would we argue about something we don't even care about? Right? Like, argue the actual objections. Don't argue these rhetorically weak nonsense arguments. I fundamentally do not care about the practical considerations of AI art. At least, you know, not compared to how much I care about the non-practical considerations. We need to argue from the root of our objections, what we actually, you know, care about. Finally, I get to stop complaining about other people's arguments. And now I get to make arguments for you people to complain about in the comments. So I know what you're thinking. Mr. Evan, you're incredibly handsome and women love you, but what are the real objections to AI art? Good question. Accurate observation. I've broken this out into 3 sections. I think these objections strike at the flaws inherent to AI art rather than flaws that could, theoretically be solved. I think the best way to put it is that I feel like when you use AI to attempt to generate art, you cut out too much of the toil of the process. The toil of the process is actually a large part of what makes it art, both in that the toil is the literal making of the art, but also in that through that toil, the artist is putting, in a way, something of themselves into the art. Like, obviously, no one believes that the Xerox of an oil painting is as valuable as the actual oil painting that some artists spent, hundreds of hours perhaps actually meticulously working the paints on. If they did, right, reproductions and prints would cost just as much as original works. The work that went into making something is, in truth, an inseparable part of it. And the reason I say that this aspect will get worse as AI art gets better is that as it stands today, most AI art still requires some level of effort by the person using the machines. But as AI art gets better, the actual labor that human beings are going to be putting into this art is going to decrease. They're going to be able to create more and more complex or complete works with less and less human input. So this is kind of the opposite of the AI art is low quality argument. Whereas that one relies on saying AI art is not as good as the developers want it to be. This one posits that, in fact, the more AI art is able to do what the developers want it to do, the less its outputs will actually be worth. Additionally, anyone who's ever made anything knows that a significant aspect of the final work comes not just from the idea, but how that idea changes and takes shape over the course of the making. It's not like the creative process is you have an idea, you hand it off to someone else, and then boom, you've done it, you've made art. You have an idea, you start working on that idea, and every step of the way, you see how it's coming together. And in the process, you refine your idea little by little. It's almost like you get inspired by your own work, and then you incorporate that inspiration back into the work itself. For instance, we recently released the pilot episode of our show Owl the AI. And now I think it looks very polished, right? What might not be immediately apparent to the untrained eye is just how much of the final product is things that we just came up with on the fly while in the process of working on it, or how many things and little changes we made here and there in response to roadblocks we came across, and how all those little aspects, these little changes from, you know, recording our lines and someone comes up with a funny joke, right? Or watching the scene play out in pre-production being like, "Oh, it'd be funny if he did this little movement." Even the number of characters we've written is mostly the result of how many people we had that we could actually get to record lines. Had we been able to just type in the initial idea we had for the show and had it instantly generated for us, it would I think be worse, and it would have less of us in it. All right. I know this sounds a little woo woo, but stick with me. If I sit down to read a novel, part of what makes that novel valuable to me is that a real human being with thoughts and feelings and opinions that they've cultivated, over their whole life, sat down, put those words to a page, and then shared it with me. There's this social communicative aspect to art. It's not just that the paints on the canvas or the ink on a page or the grooves in a record make like a pleasing image or thought or sound. It's that someone somewhere sat down, they created this thing that they wanted to share with you. And in doing so, they share something of themselves as well. I I just don't care what AI has to say about the human condition. I do care, for instance, what Dostoevsky has to say. A real man who lived and loved and suffered. When I sit down and read the Brothers Karamazov, I'm connected through time and space to the thoughts and feelings of a real human being. I mean, look around. We're more socially isolated than we've ever been before. It's it's the mindset, this mindset that would disregard the value of art as social that is killing us. We gradually as a society have just come to value human connection less and less. And art is just the latest casualty in that. I don't know about y'all, but I'm sick of watching it happen. And I can't stomach the idea of giving one more inch to the altar of progress that no one has asked for. Our team's sort of unofficial slogan, if you will, is a quote by G.K. Chesterton, which to the keen viewer, knowing we're fans of Chesterton probably actually gives a lot about us away. But the quote is art is the signature of man. Now, y'all promise not to click away, but I want to share sort of the larger context of that quote, a passage from The Everlasting Man by G.K. Chesterton. And I quote, "That is the simplest lesson to learn in the cavern of the colored pictures. Only it is too simple to be learnt. It is the simple truth that man does differ from the brutes in kind and not in degree. And the proof of it is here. That it sounds like a truism to say that the most primitive man drew a picture of a monkey. And it sounds like a joke to say that the most intelligent monkey drew a picture of a man. Something of division and disproportion has appeared, and it is unique. Art is the signature of man." G.K. Chesterton. Art is not just valuable because at its best it approaches some level of beauty. And it's not just valuable because it's a human being sharing something of themselves with another. At its core, even if you stripped everything else away, art is man participating in creation in a fundamentally uniquely human way. Art is a fulfillment of a fundamental part of human nature. The creating is the thing, it's the reason for the art. There are, of course, other aspects as well. It's not directionless creation, but if you were to boil it down to the bare minimum, what it is, even when it's reduced to its lowest form, that is what it is. And I think we all know it. Have you ever watched like a little kid scribbling away on a piece of paper? You know, zero hand-eye coordination. They're struggling to draw like even simple shapes, let alone like anything that anyone can recognize. They absolutely love it. It looks terrible, right? But they love it. And as an adult, you love to watch them do it. It is just a joy to watch them scribbling these random colors. And if you show even a little bit of interest in what they're making, they'll babble on about it in little kid speak you also can't really understand. Just absolutely delighted in what they've made. And, you know, we can't help but share in their excitement. That, I think, is exactly the point. So, I guess to answer the question in the title, why you shouldn't use AI art, is because to use it is to rob ourselves of the creating. It has no value proposition for us because all they're offering to do is to take away this thing of ineffable value, the very act of the making. Now, I know this may hurt our watch time, but I want to share with you all a poem by Rudyard Kipling. I think it's relevant to the whole topic at hand, especially the last stanza, which I could just read the last stanza, but if y'all have made it this far, just humor me, please. Thank you. When Earth's last picture is painted, and the tubes are twisted and dry, when the oldest colors have faded, and the youngest critic has died, We shall rest, in faith we shall need it. Lie down for an eon or two, until the master of all good workmen shall put us to work anew. And those who were good shall be happy. They shall sit in a golden chair. They shall splash at a tin leak canvas with brushes of comet's hair. They shall find real saints to draw from, Magdalene, Peter, and Paul. They shall work for an age in a sitting, and never get tired at all. And only the master shall praise us, and only the master shall blame, and no one shall work for money, and no one shall work for fame, but each for the joy of the working shall sit separate in his own star, and draw the thing as he sees it, for the God of things as they are.